Hey, welcome to another video. So today we're going to be going into everything there is to know about SAVATHUN, the Witch Queen. But before we begin, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, let's jump straight into it. SAVATHUN, formerly known as Sathona, is a hive god and sister to Wrath, the god of war, and Oryx, the Taken King. Together with her two siblings, she was a progenitor of the contemporary hive species and one of its chief gods, having made a pact with the worms of Fundament. She is driven to understand the deepest secrets of the universe, and gains power from the deception and confusion of those who seek to understand her unfathomable schemes. However, her true goals were revealed to undermine the Witness, and its goals of realizing the final shape, working her own secretive agenda from the inside to prevent humanity's extinction during the collapse, and to protect and preserve the Traveler at all costs. She had also schemed to free her kind from the worm's pact she originally made back on Fundament, pursuing other means to acquire sustenance beyond the sword logic. For her actions, she would become reborn as the first Hive Lightbearer, with Amaru partnered as her ghost. With the two together created the Lucent Brood, as her own army of light-wielding hive. SAVATHUN was born Sathona on the planet Fundament. She was one of a short-lived species whose homeworld had crashed into Fundament millions of years earlier. With the shards of the planet forming Fundament's continents, the Osmium Court was one such continent, ruled by the Osmium King, and Sathona was his second-born daughter, older sister of Zero, and younger sister to Arish. The three sisters were tutored by Teox, a sterile mother, a proto-hive morph capable of spawning children, which also allowed them to live longer by eating mother jelly at adulthood. The proto-hive's harsh lives convinced Sathona at an early age to become a mother, not because she wanted children or feared dying, but because she wanted to live long enough to have meaning in her life. However, by the time her father turned 10 Fundament years, a lifetime by the standards of their species, he had discovered a dead worm on the shores of the Osmium Court, which he started tending to as a familiar, and began raving that the synergy, a prophesied disaster, would soon occur. While Arish took her father's warnings to heart, Teox concluded that the king was falling to senility in his old age, and that none of his daughters, which were 2 years old at the time, could properly rule the Osmium Court and protect it from the Helium Court, a rival kingdom. While acknowledging that Sathona was a brilliant thinker, Teox noted she could not fight. In desperation, Teox sent a message to the rulers of the Helium Court, the Helium Drinkers, saying that she would help them assassinate the king and his daughters if they installed her as their regent. The Helium Drinkers accepted Teox's proposal and attacked, killing the king but failing to kill his daughters. In the confusion, Sathona managed to steal her father's worm in their escape. Reaching Arish's ship, the three sisters made a blood oath to return and take vengeance, with Sathona vowing that she would become a mother and raise her spawn on the corpses of Helium Drinkers. Over the next year, the three sisters sailed the oceans of Fundament. During this time, Sathona began to hear her father's worm speak to her, guiding her to acts that would save the sisters over the year. Finally, the three sisters found a ship they named the Needle, built of high technology, but whose crew had died obscenely after hatching an egg from a creature that they could not recognize. Zero insisted that they sell the ship at the Kaharn Atoll, where the species of Fundament gathered, saying that an auction could raise them enough money to hire mercenaries to fight the Helium Drinkers. However, Sathona told Zero that the ship was worthless. Arish instead suggested that they repair the ship. With prompting from the worm, Sathona agreed with Arish and convinced Zero to repair the ship. Over the next 2 years, the sisters repaired the Needle, but by this point, the sisters were 5 years old. Sathona raised her fears that she would soon be too old to eat mother jelly, and that the sisters were unable to fulfill their oath. Arish said that the sisters had to dive beneath the oceans of Fundament, traveling to the planet's core. Zero warned that this was how the crew had died, but Sathona, urged on by the worm, agreed with Arish. The sisters took the Needle into the deep. They finally reached a point where they could use the ship's sensors on the oceans. To their horror, they discovered that the synergy was real, and that Fundament's moons had already aligned. Just then, they were encountered by the Leviathan, a creature long spoken of in proto-hive myth. The Leviathan warned the sisters that they needed to turn back, or else they would unleash disaster upon the universe, saying that they faced a choice between the light, which offered civilization, and the darkness, which only offered violence. However, the Leviathan offered no hope to the sisters to avoid this synergy. Sathona then revealed the worm's help to her sisters, and how it urged them to go down. Rejecting the Leviathan's warnings, the sisters dove into the core. Reaching the very center of Fundament, the three sisters found the worm gods Akka, Ir, Zol, and Yol. The worm gods offered the three sisters a chance for the proto-hive to escape Fundament, as well as achieve immortality. All they had to do was take the worm's larvae into them as symbiotes and spread them among the proto-hive. The worms posed the caveat that the sisters must never cease their natures. Zero must always test her strength, Sathona must always be cunning, and Arash must always try to understand. The sisters accepted the pact and became the first hive. Zero took the night morph and became Zivor-Arath. Sathona took the mother morph and became SAVATHUN. And Arash took the king morph, transforming into a male and becoming Arix, the king of the hive. As Arix and his sisters forced an ultimatum on the remaining proto-hive to accept the worms or perish, Arix turned his attention to Fundament's moons, and the Ammonites there who had allied with the Traveler, and gave asylum to Teox. Initially, he was willing to negotiate with the Ammonites, but his sister Savathun was under pressure from the worms, killed Arix as punishment. Rather than dying, Arix's soul instead passed to his ascendant realm, or throne world, where his soul resided until he returned to the mortal realm. Rebuked, Arix purged what sympathy and goodwill he had left, becoming a merciless tyrant. He and his sisters warred with and killed one another on a regular basis after the defeat of the Ammonites, as part of their worship of the sword logic and their attempt to become the sharpest blades in the universe, heading to their ascendant realms when defeated. Their war of revenge against Teox had transformed into a campaign of genocide, when they slew the Ammonites and the other interstellar civilizations to feed their worms. When Oryx established the court of Oryx to study the sword logic, Savathun was inspired to establish a court of her own, known as the High Coven. During the war with the Akume, Oryx came to realize that the worm gods had deceived him and his sisters. Their worms' appetites were growing past their ability to feed with death. Meeting with his sisters in the Ascendant Realm, surrounded by their servants, some of which despised them for showing weakness, they despaired over their dilemma. When his sisters offered their power to help Oryx find a way to save them, Oryx killed them, then used that power to confront his patron god Akka. He killed Akka so that he could steal its ability to call upon the deep, and created the Tablets of Ruin, which gave him the power to take. His transformation complete, Oryx was now Oryx, the Taken King. During the subsequent war with the Akume, Oryx revived Zivor-Arath in an act of war, and revived Savathun in an act of cunning. He then decreed the Tith system. Each hive would kill their enemies, take some to feed their own worm, and tith the rest to their superior. Thralls would tith to acolytes. Acolytes would tith to knights or wizards. The knights and wizards would tith to the Ascendant Hive. Those who commanded legions of warriors and earned the right to enter the Hive God's Ascendant Realms. All of this violence would eventually reach Oryx, Savathun, and Zivor-Arath, allowing their worms to feed on violence while continuing to invoke their inner natures. Following the Golden Amputation, Oryx declared to his sisters that the Hive had conquered its way to the edge of the deep, and that it had granted him a personal audience. As Oryx retreated into his throne world to commune with it, Savathun conspired with Zivor-Arath to stand him there and steal his Tablets of Ruin by cutting off the tribute flowing through his Tith system. They were ultimately unsuccessful, and on returning, Oryx waged war on Savathun and crippled her own tribute. In the aftermath of this attempted betrayal, Savathun learned of one of Oryx's daughters, Ir-Anak, and was both enraged and delighted by her brilliance. While Oryx was off studying the deep, his son Crota was deceived by Savathun into using his cleaver to cut a portal inside his throne world, allowing the Vex to invade it. This amused Savathun. Her daughter alerted Ir to the situation, who alerted Oryx in turn. After Oryx dealt with the incursion, Savathun told Zivor-Arath that Oryx's throne world had been compromised, and showed her where to cut into it so she could kill him. However, Oryx had recognized that his throne world was vulnerable, so he moved it into the mighty dreadnought from the remains of Akka, stealing from SAVATHUN her scalpel to make it. After Oryx confronted and captured Kira for the last time, he presented the Vex to SAVATHUN as a gift, hoping she would be pleased by its simulations. When she asked him what proof they had that what they were doing was right, Oryx simply replied that the Hive's existence was proof enough in their convictions to live eternal by the sword logic. Following the war with the Harmony, SAVATHUN decided that her fleets would enter the black hole that the Harmony lived around, claiming that they would become stronger for it, while Zivorath took her fleets away from Oryx's, as she felt he constrained her too much. Around the same time that the Hive's tribute system was established, SAVATHUN, unsatisfied with the establishment method of worm feeding, embarked on a project that would allow her to escape the trap feeding the worms created. To do so, she attempted to increase the rate at which her subordinate Hive gathered tribute for her, by placing several ascendant Hive in orbit around a black hole. In doing this, she hoped that because time would pass more slowly for the Ascendants relative to the outside universe, the Ascendant's worm would perceive an increased rate of tribute produced by a lesser Hive elsewhere in the cosmos, and thus be satisfied without a true increase in tribute. However, this plan was unsuccessful, as the Ascendant's worms understood what was happening and increased their hunger. Consequently, SAVATHUN resolved to try another approach, in which her subordinate Hive would gather tribute in a region of space where time passed faster than the rest of the universe. She planned to use the power and insight attained through this method to completely overhaul the way in which she gained tribute through the sword logic, going from a system where tribute was obtained through violence to one where tribute was obtained through the failure of other beings to understand her schemes. This new system of acquiring tribute would be known as Imbaru. To achieve this, she purposefully led Crota to let the Vex into her father's throne world, in order to compel the Vex to create Kira. Later, when the campaign against the Harmony was complete and Kira was taken and given to her as a gift, SAVATHUN left her siblings behind and entered the Harmony's black hole, hoping to further her plans and prevent a taken Vex mind from reporting her work to Oryx. While in the black hole, she taught Kira to harness Hive magic and apply it to computational problem solving. Using this, Kira learned how to navigate and engineer the Singularity, then format the information for SAVATHUN to understand. Now able to understand the Singularity's inner workings, she began moving forward with her grand scheme. SAVATHUN explained the details of her plan to a confused thrall, as per the rule of the High Coven that a wizard's schemes should be incomprehensible to a thrall. She then recorded her conversation and encrypted it with the assistance of Kira, along with a message for a future reader. This message would remain unread for an untold span of time, until the Guardian stumbled upon it, encrypted within Glimmer while exploring the Dreaming City. Your brother's conquest cut a path towards the final shape. When you have finished pouring your poison in his ear, not my poison, we see your doubts. You speak them to Oryx. Doubts? After all this time, you think I have doubts? Remember your sisters, little Sithona. Remember the synergy. What changed the motion of our moons, my witness? You cried out, as your brother did, as your sister did, into the darkness. Now the children of Sol do the same. You aren't the answer they want. We are the answer you received. This is a passage from the witness conversing with SAVATHUN. At some point, SAVATHUN became aware of the power within the darkness that had been guiding her in her people's fate since she had first heard the whispers of her worm familiar as a child on Fundament. An ancient and terrifyingly powerful entity that called itself the Witness. She pledged herself in service to this being, seemingly unbeknownst to either of her siblings, and would follow its direct commands alongside its disciples. One of these disciples, Rolk, was tasked with watching over SAVATHUN from inside her own throne world. SAVATHUN was present alongside the Witness and its disciples as the Black Fleet ravaged Earth during the collapse. When Nezarec had the paracausal object known as the Veil secured for the Witness planned to establish a connection to the Pale Heart, SAVATHUN betrayed Nezarec, killing him and cursing his remains while hiding the Veil away on Neptune. The Witness was also deceived by the Witch Queen into thinking the Veil had been lost, causing it to withdraw its forces and retreat to the depths of intergalactic space. At some point, either before or after the collapse, SAVATHUN approached the human Sean Rigby in the guise of a human woman and told him of a coming catastrophe. She instructed him to follow a star to the south and to sing a special song to it every night. Sean and his family followed SAVATHUN's instructions and eventually found themselves beneath the Traveler, where the Rigbys have lived ever since. 2 years after the apparent death of Oryx in the Taken War, a previously unknown hive brood infested the abandoned Golden Age archaeologies on the moon of Titan, led by a powerful hive such as Naktal, the Fury of SAVATHUN, Kudazad, the Binder of SAVATHUN, and Van Bullock, the Trusted of SAVATHUN. Ghost scans of various hive artifacts further linked to the new brood to SAVATHUN. Most disturbing of all, fire teams of Guardians were lost during repeated incursions into the new Pacific arcology, with the most recent being the Operation Caliban. It was then discovered that the missing Guardians have been captured and made subjects of the Witch Queen's foul experiments, having their light converted by the hive into crystals containing elemental void light. These crystals were intended to feed an innovation ritual for her, the centerpiece of which was a massive shrieker, titled after her aforementioned song. With the aid of the Praxic warlock Taco III, the Guardian fought through the depths of the arcology and disrupting the hive's ritual, destroying the crystals and the song shrieker in the process. Evidence from elsewhere in the solar system indicates that SAVATHUN has taken control of her late brother's Taken army through Kira, having mastered the power to take through its perfected simulations of Oryx. On Io, Taken forces led by Ir Arak, the tongue of Kira, have attempted to corrupt the Vex's collective at the Pyramidion, only to fail due to the Guardian's intervention. Furthermore, a Red Legion commander, Grask the Consumed, was encountered as a Taken. The Red Legion only had a presence in Sol after Oryx's death, so this serves as further indication that SAVATHUN had achieved domination over the Taken. After the awakening and fall of Nokris and the worm god Zal, Guardians found the grasp of Nokris on Mars, had been sending messages to SAVATHUN, pleading their fealty to her. Envoys of SAVATHUN's brood have also been seen emerging from the ascendant portals in Hela's Basin. As SAVATHUN neared gaining complete control over the Taken within the reef, the Witch Queen gained a new and powerful ally in the form of Riven, the last known Amakara in the solar system, taken by Oryx during the onset of the Taken War, in the first invasion of the Dreaming City. However, unlike most Taken, Riven retained her sense of self and free will. With Oryx's passing and the Taken leaderless, SAVATHUN made contact with the Taken within the city and Riven, giving the Amakara a new purpose to serve the Witch Queen. Though Riven, the Taken were prepared to corrupt the whole of the Awoken and launch an invasion on the reef, using proxies like Uldren Sov and his fallen scorn. Though Riven succeeded in opening the gateway to the city, it left her vulnerable to the Guardians sent to kill her. The Guardians, aided by their Awoken allies and the formerly Taken Techions, managed to kill Riven and cleanse her Taken essence. Nonetheless, her death served a purpose as the Amakara transcended death and granted one last wish, cursing the Dreaming City with Taken energies and altering its rules of ascendancy. Whether SAVATHUN was implied to have aligned with her sister or not, Xivu Arath had taken measures to assume control over the Taken and Hive within the Dreaming City. Entities sworn to the Hive god of war have appeared stealing Awoken relics of dangerous knowledge, with powerful Taken creatures supporting them. Though the Guardians put a stop to this scheme, it proves that the two scheming sisters have shared a seemingly mutual alliance to seize their brother's Taken army for themselves. To further her goals and maintain her advantage, SAVATHUN entrusted her daughter, Dul Inkaru, the Eternal Return, to command the Taken curse within the Dreaming City, and find a way to invade the Distributary, the true origin of the Awoken, to reach new bounds of godly strength as time ran differently in this subordinate universe, and she could actually acquire more tribute in less time, and also use the technology the Awoken had to leave the child universe for the parent universe. Despite having the backing of Xivu Arath's Hive and the Taken at her command, Morosov called upon her Guardians' allies to fight back against the Taken corruption. Battling their way to the center of Elusnia, the former corrupted throne world of the Awoken Queen, The Guardians fought with Dulankaru and killed the daughters of the Witch Queen. However, this seeming failure was all part of Savathun's greater plans for the Dreaming City. After Dulankaru's death at the hands of the Guardians, the Dreaming City reverted to a state it had been in upon first being unsealed by the Guardian, progressing again by the same process of becoming corrupted by the Taken, and culminating in another battle between Dulankaru and the Guardians. This apparent time loop spun by the Taken Vex mind Kira and realized Riven's wish both further Savathun's long-term goal of amassing tribute for herself through her subordinates committing violence within spaces with looped or dilated time, and also presents the Guardians with a dilemma. They can either repeatedly strike down Dulankaru and relive the same series of events, or they can refuse to do so and allow Dulankaru to complete her mission to find the distributary. Over time, however, Ikora Rey would reveal that both goals to be fabricated by the Witch Queen herself. After the deaths of Dulankaru, the Guardian was delivered a series of missives from an unknown sender via Glimmer, capitalizing on the confusion sowed by the Vanguard's misinterpretations of the Truth to Power manuscripts. Savathun amassed tributes of Imbaru off the Guardians, attempts to understand her modus operandi. In doing so, however, she would also provide valuable intel hidden within the manuscripts that Ikora and the Hidden would decipher. Savathun would later attempt to undermine one of the Witness's future disciples, the former Cabal Emperor Callus. During one of the Shadow's conquests of the Hive War Moons, Savathun laid out a trap for him to find the Crown of Sorrow, an ancient Ascendant Hive relic believed to imitate Oryx's power to compel wills. In reality, it was a surveillance device meant for the Witch Queen to spy on Callus from the Ascendant realm in the hopes of putting him under her control when worn. Instead, Callus had Galran, the Sorrowbearer, wear the crown in an attempt to command the Hive, only to trigger Savathun's enchantments that drove Galran insane and unleashed the Hive within the Leviathan's menagerie. Galran's terror was only short-lived as Callus had put him down by a raid team of Guardians, with the aid of Savathun's magic and the crown retrieved to be cleansed of the witch's wards. The Witch Queen would go on to torment Callus by infiltrating the minds of his loyalists, though the use of what Callus described as viral language. She also left messages within the Chronicon, a document Callus commissioned as a record of his and his loyalists' past and future deeds. When three Hive sibling heretics of the spawn of Crota, Malkanth, Akrazul, and Azavath, sought to rebel against the daughters of Savathun's nephew Crota, who had taken over the leadership of the Hidden Swarm, Savathun was revealed to be the mastermind behind their conspiracy. As the wizard Malkanth performed a ritual to put the essence of Akrazul, a crippled knight, into the body of her fellow wizard Azavath, the plan backfired. Akrazul's rage was so great that it became unbridled with Azavath's body, leading him to slay Malkanth and assault the swarm. As Malkanth's essence had left her body in her death, Savathun whispered to Azavath's essence and instructed her to take up the mantle of the Death Singer. Placing her essence into Malkanth's body, Azavath would become Ir-Aram, the Death Singer, killing both Akrazul and the Swarm's champion Zulmak with her death song. Savathun captured Zulmak's essence as he died for her own purposes, and discussed with Malkanth's essence without a body before she died. The Witch Queen told Malkanth of her dismissal of gods and absolutes, such as time, space, and death, when they are all so easily broken. Believing that when the final absolute falls, reality will face a final and complete ending, Savathun said she wished to ensure that end would not come to pass as Malkanth's essence faded away into nothing. The Witch Queen would make contact with the daughters of Crota. As part of her greater schemes, she made a deal with the four offering two boons, the essence of Zulmak to be reanimated as a puppet champion for the daughter's nefarious purposes, and the reformation of the Choir, a legendary group of death singers to be led by Ir-Aram. In turn, the daughters would invest in the construction of the Scarlet Keep, to draw the Guardians to the moon and set events that would come to pass. However, the daughters failed to realize that this deal was another deceit of Savathun's. The Witch Queen was aware that even with the Choir and Zulmak, the Guardians would decimate the Hidden Swarm. In truth, the Witch Queen wanted the Scarlet Keep built as bait to lure the Guardians so that her brother's line would meet its end, believing it had reached its course. Following her rivalry with Callus and the conflict on Luna, Savathun enacted a new scheme to further her plans. The Witch Queen soon found an opportunity in a massive Vex computational array found on Io, as SAVATHUN sought knowledge to inform her plans and pawns to carry them out. The array would be able to fulfill both. She sent a large Taken Blight into the array to corrupt it and bring it under her control, to which the Vex responded with violence. The Vanguard detected a massive surge of power beneath the Pyramidion, where the array was located, and sent a Guardian strike team to investigate. They soon found the Vex and Taken, commanded by Barisk, the envoy of SAVATHUN, battling each other for control of the array. The Guardians recognized the Taken Blight to be similar to those found in the Dreaming City, causing them to suspect SAVATHUN as the one behind this Taken offensive. Eris Morn warned Zavala the Witch Queen was not as foolhardy as her brother, as she would not risk a direct confrontation, and that the city must be prepared and wise enough to know when SAVATHUN would play her hand. Shortly prior to the Pyramid's arrival, Nokris attempted to enter the Ascendant realm by way of trickery, instead of using the sword logic. This attracted the attention of his aunt. SAVATHUN drew her nephew into a fabricated version of her throne world and struck a bargain. In her plans to defy the Witness, she had taken notice of his necromantic power. Knowing that the Witness's forces would soon converge on Sol to convert the Guardians to their side, she instructed Nokris to interfere in any of their attempts to communicate with the Guardian. To aid her nephew, she ordered the Taken under her command to attack Io. The moon had been chosen by the first pyramid to make contact, and the vessel had taken position above the cradle, where the tree of silver wings had grown in the wake of the traveler's departure. SAVATHUN's forces invaded the site in order to interfere with any communication attempts. As the pyramids invaded Mercury, Titan, and Mars as well, multiple eyes of SAVATHUN appeared in these locations. Eris Morn believed they were a way the Witch Queen spied on the assailed planets, and could only be destroyed by the Erroneous Effigy, a trace rifle consecrated in darkness from the tree's branch. Though Nokris was able to delay the Guardian's attempts to communicate with the Witness for weeks, he was ultimately slain, ending SAVATHUN's interference and exposing her treachery. The Witch Queen's efforts to subvert the Witness would not go unanswered, forcing her into hiding from the wrath. The Hive Broods that had also previously sworn to SAVATHUN would brand her a heretic for having conspired against the Witness with the exiled Nokris, and defected from her ranks as the Black Fleet invaded Sol. Due to this, her own court was left in the dark about her whereabouts. The power vacuum granted her sister, Xivu Arath, the opportunity to consolidate the Hive in the solar system into her power and release her Wrathborn corruption with the cryptoliths. Xivu would also send her champion, the High Celebrant, to hunt the excommunicated Witch Queen, and wrestle control of the hidden swarm free of her schemes. Her absence did not impede her Taken forces, however, as they swarmed upon a new piece of the Traveler in the EDZ, which was calling out to the Guardian and the Crow, through a form of paracausal hawk. The Witch Queen shrouded the shard in her interference, much like the Tree of Silver Wings on Io, and apparently watched the first fight that ensued. Observing Crow and the Guardian celebrate their victory at a bonfire, she was hit with a sudden wave of nostalgia, remembering her father, sisters, and their shared past on Fundament. Titles of the Taken commanders she sent into battle, the Guardian under the shard: Akorith, the Light Drinker of SAVATHUN; Isharesk, the Light Binder of SAVATHUN; Karusk, the Light Eater of SAVATHUN; and Tarusk, the Light Stealer of SAVATHUN, imply that she might be trying to siphon the light from the Traveler in some way. At some point after Dominus Gul's defeat, SAVATHUN began to meddle with the Evocate General Umar Arath's mind and fuel her obsession with the Hive. Umar Arath started to believe the worship of Hive gods and deployment of their battle techniques was necessary for the Cabal's survival. Under the Witch Queen's influence, she began conducting a ritual at the center square of Tabadal's weaponsmith district, and when Cattle approached her, she tried to coax her into kneeling before the god of war. Cattle slew the former general, but her death only fueled SAVATHUN's plan to conjure Xivu Arath into Tabadal, and gift her another system to wage war upon. SAVATHUN began enacting her grand scheme by possessing the body of the warlock Osiris after he was left lightless by the death of his host, Sagira, during a confrontation with the High Celebrant of Xivu Arath on Luna. Slithering in one of her forms over the broken pieces of the ghost, she took over the vulnerable Osiris. Now posing as Osiris, SAVATHUN sent a message explaining Sagira's death to the Vanguard and that he would be pursuing the High Celebrant for revenge. This drew the Guardian and the Crow to her, and she arranged for Crow to save her from a night within the depths of the Hive Warrens, placing her in a position to manipulate the former Awoken Prince. When the Imperial Cabal arrived in the Sol System, SAVATHUN accompanied Zavala on a mission to meet with Empress Catul. Disguised as Osiris, SAVATHUN acted as Zavala's advisor during the meeting. The Empress sought an alliance between the Cabal and humanity in light of the fall of Tabadal, the Cabal's homeworld and capital of the Hive. However, SAVATHUN warned Zavala against trusting the Cabal. She reminded him that the Cabal were not known for forming alliances, but rather for conquering. Furthermore, SAVATHUN highlighted Catul's betrayal of her father, Emperor Callus, to Dominus Gaul and expressed her belief that the Empress would ultimately betray them as well. While Catul dismissed her father's softer nature, Osiris suggested that Callus's lack of ambition was a true issue, accusing both him and Zavala of failing to see the larger picture. Catul, frustrated by what she saw as their lack of vision, argued that humanity would be doomed unless it expanded its horizons. Despite this, her proposal culminated in a demand for Zavala to bow and join the Cabal Empire, which Zavala immediately refused. As her bodyguards prepared to attack, Catul called them off, allowing Zavala and Osiris to leave in peace, vowing that they would meet again on the battlefield. Following this tense meeting, SAVATHUN was assigned a task force organized by Zavala to confront the Emperor. This task force was placed under the command of Lord Saladin Forge, with Crow joining as a reconnaissance expert and Amanda Holliday providing air support. SAVATHUN had her own motives for bringing Crow into the operation, seeking to manipulate him for her own purposes. The young wolf struck the first blow against the Cabal by killing Commander Dracos on Nessus and capturing a Bell of Conquest in the process. Osiris explained that this bell allowed them to formally challenge the Cabal Empire, potentially giving them a strategic advantage. SAVATHUN also briefed Lord Saladin on the bell and its connection to the Rite of Proving, a Cabal ritual that resolved disputes, comparing it to the Crucible, a ritual of combat in the Last City. During a meeting at the helm, SAVATHUN made light conversation with Crow, complimenting his new hunter attire. She dismissed his offer to pay for the outfit, instead requesting that he keep his new mask on to prevent anyone from recognizing him from the Last City. Crow, eager to help the city, agreed to wear it. Osiris then shared a personal memory, explaining how he had once disguised himself during his exile, and that he was now welcomed back into the city. He reassured Crow that one day he too would be accepted. Turning to the young wolf, Osiris praised their successful mission on Nessus, and listened as Crow reported that Catul was attempting to use the Rite of Proving to establish her war council. SAVATHUN decided that their next step should be to eliminate all the contenders for Catul's council, preventing the Cabal from reorganizing and starting a new war in the system. The first target was Balius of the Golem, located on Europa. After the young wolf killed him, they acquired the Hammer of Proving, which SAVATHUN explained was meant to be an offering to Catul. By taking it, they could use the Cabal's own traditions and history against them. Returning the hammer to the helm, Osiris underscored the significance of their actions and the potential impact on the Cabal's internal structure. Following the elimination of Val Marag, Osiris received a communication from Catul requesting a meeting. She was kept waiting until the young wolf arrived at the helm, which point SAVATHUN activated the holographic communicator and greeted the Empress. She mockingly apologized for the delay, blaming it on having to manage her subordinates' actions. Catul corrected her, asserting that the Rite of Proving was a sacred Cabal tradition and that the Guardians should not interfere. Osiris countered by arguing that since the Cabal were auditioning for a war council, it concerned them deeply. Catul then repeated her earlier offer to add Zavala to the council, claiming it was a way for humanity to avoid war. She insisted that Zavala was wise enough to understand her offer. Although SAVATHUN was impressed that Catul was offering mercy, learning from the mistakes of her predecessors, she argued that Catul was relying on outdated traditions to try and keep the Cabal united. As an empress without a true empire, Catul had no position to offer anything of value. Angered, Catul ended the communication, asserting that the Cabal still held their honor, even if they had lost their home, and warning that her patience was running thin. Osiris responded by reaffirming their mission to eliminate Catul's council contenders, as the Empress could not wage war without a council. The task force's next mission took them to Nessus, where they targeted Ixal, the far-reaching, a scion attempting to collect data from the Vex prediction engines. While the young wolf successfully killed Ixal, 3 other scions managed to escape with stolen information related to possible futures involving Zavala. SAVATHUN, now gathered with the young wolf and Crow at the war table, expressed interest in Crow's reports on the Cabal. Crow's intelligence revealed that many of the Cabal were angered by the disruption of the Rite of Proving, but were also upset by Catul's offer to humanity. SAVATHUN believed this discontent could be used to further destabilize the Cabal internally. Crow, however, worried that the stolen data may be used against Zavala in retaliation. Osiris reassured him that the data was speculative, not fate, and urged them to gather more information. Savathun ordered the young wolf and Crow to continue investigating, but Crow protested, feeling that Zavala deserved to be informed. Osiris replied that they hoped there would be nothing to report if the Guardians remained focused on their task. As the task force continued to target the Cabal and disrupt their operations, the internal struggle within the Imperial Cabal grew more intense. With the fate of Zavala and humanity hanging in the balance, Savathun's influence over the situation, though subtle and manipulative, was undeniable as she guided the Guardians on their mission and worked to further her own agendas. With each step, the tension between the Cabal and humanity escalated, setting the stage for a larger conflict that would eventually define the fate of the Sol system. So 2 weeks after the previous events from the last video, a lone Scion infiltrated the last city with the intent of assassinating Commander Zavala. The Scion attempted to kill him within 1 day of the city's tranquil gardens, using advanced light draining technology based on the Traveler's Cage, a device designed to suppress the power of the light. Fortunately, Crow, ever watchful, noticed the threat just in time and was able to warn Zavala, preventing the attack from succeeding. However, in his haste, Crow briefly revealed his face when he took off his mask, a mistake that did not go unnoticed. When Crow returned to the helm, Osiris, who was actually Savathun in disguise, confronted him. The tone of the meeting was tense, with Osiris visibly angry over Crow's lapse and discretion. The disguised Savathun chastised the hunter for his carelessness, expressing frustration over how the situation could have been avoided. Fortunately for Crow, Zavala appeared to dismiss the event as a mere hallucination so that the commander didn't seem to suspect anything out of the ordinary. Despite this, Osiris insisted that Crow's failure could have grave consequences and questioned his judgment. Crow argued that he had to act, that Zavala was in real danger, but Osiris was not convinced. In response, Osiris downplayed the threat, asserting that it wasn't the first time an assassin had tried to infiltrate the city. He didn't see it as a significant crisis, arguing that Zavala could have handled the situation alone, and had likely been able to fight off the Scion without Crow's intervention. The two engaged in a heated exchange, with Osiris pointing out that Crow should have known better, especially given his past experiences working for the Spider in the underworld. Osiris stressed how small mistakes could lead to much larger problems, referencing Crow's previous slip-ups and comparing them to his own experience with the Hive god Wrath. At this remark, Crow snapped back, sarcastically suggesting that Osiris had learned nothing from her own pursuit of Wrath. Savathun, pretending to be furious, warned Crow to be careful with his words. The tension was palpable. Crow apologized for not wearing his mask during the incident, but maintained his belief that Zavala remained at risk. After a moment, Osiris relented, agreeing that Zavala's safety was indeed important. To mitigate the risk of another attack, Osiris ordered Crow to stay close to Zavala, assigning him as the commander's personal bodyguard. Osiris explained that a larger team would attract attention and potentially thwart any further attempts to draw out the assassins. He instructed Crow to remain in the shadows, to speak only when necessary, and to follow his orders without question. Most importantly, Crow was to keep his mask on at all times. Crow, though still uncertain about the dangers they faced, promised to comply with the instructions, knowing that his actions could mean the difference between life and death for the commander. The conversation marked a turning point for Crow. He was no longer just an outsider struggling with his identity, but was now directly involved in the protection of Zavala, a pivotal figure within the last city. Yet the conspiracy surrounding the Scion assassin was far from over, and the threat against Zavala remained ever present. The day after the conclusion of the second Guardian Games, Savathun initiated the next phase of her intricate scheme. The last city was engulfed by an unprecedented phenomenon known as the Endless Night. This event was triggered when Vex, controlled by Kira Blade Transform, activated a simulation powerful enough to envelop the entire city, draining its energy and plunging it into darkness. In the midst of the chaos, Savathun, now disguised as Osiris, consulted with Ikora Rey. Despite Osiris's extensive knowledge of the Vex, Savathun expressed that the situation was beyond even his grasp. She suggested they seek the help of Mithrax, the Elenxi Kel of the House of Light, a skilled splicer known for his ability to communicate with machines. Mithrax and his house were invited into the last city to assist with halting the Endless Night. Upon their arrival, they were welcomed by Osiris, along with Lakshmi II and the Guardian. As the House of Light set up their camp within the Botsa district, Lakshmi II voiced her suspicions. She warned Mithrax that not everyone in the city would be as open-minded as the Guardians, urging him to keep his people to themselves. In contrast, Osiris offered a more welcoming attitude, asking if there was anything that Elixni needed. Mithrax noted that certain modifications were necessary to improve the production of ether, which was vital for the illusory. Lakshmi suggested that any such modifications be cleared by Ikora, then distanced herself from the conversation, stating she would focus on advocating for the people of the city during the turbulent times predicted by the future war cult, the FWC. As Lakshmi left, Osiris apologized for her harshness and explained that tensions were running high in the city, resulting in an uneasy mixture of decree and democracy regarding the presence of the House of Light. SAVATHUN, in her guise as Osiris, feigned a desire for peace, hoping that the House of Light would be eventful, a sentiment to which Mithrax readily agreed. Later, a tense dispute arose between Mithrax and Saint 14 over the division of resources between the city and the House of Light. Saint 14, steadfast in his beliefs that Illusory had already received too much assistance, argued that the city's resources were stretched thin due to ongoing effects of the Endless Night. He claimed that anything given to Illusory was essentially being taken from the citizens of the last city. Osiris intervened, reminding Saint 14 that Ikora had specifically ordered that Illusory be treated as part of the city's people, and thus their needs should be prioritized. Saint 14, frustrated, accused Osiris of being overly political, echoing Lakshmi's concerns about his motives. Mithrax, however, affirmed that both the House of Light and the Last City shared a mutual goal, to aid the Guardians in their mission to end the Vex threat. Saint 14, still unconvinced, tried to challenge Mithrax, asking if the Illusory would comply with all of his demands if the roles were reversed, if he were in their position. Mithrax responded with a firm yet resigned answer. The Illusory would give him whatever he asked for because, above all, they wanted to survive. This statement caused Saint 14 to reconsider, and he finally relented, acknowledging that Mithrax and the Illusory were fighting for their people just as he fought for his own. In the end, the two agreed to share the limited supplies between the humans and the Illusory. After a tense but mutual understanding, both parties left, each returning to their respective duties. As Osiris departed, she reflected on the development. There was something interesting about the dynamic between the two factions, an uneasy but necessary cooperation for the greater good of the city. SAVATHUN, meanwhile, had her own private musings. In disguise, she wandered the streets of the last city, feeding off the people's ignorance and naivety. Yet, amidst the confusion and darkness, she found herself unexpectedly yearning for their companionship, a feeling that unsettled her deeply. As she watched the endless night unfold before her, she was haunted by the hunger of her worm, still demanding sustenance despite her plans being so far-reaching. She cast her gaze upward, toward the traveler, its presence ever looming above her, an unsettling reminder of the power she sought to control. The Guardians' efforts to lift the endless night, a dark phenomenon that threatened the last city, were successful after they destroyed Kira, the Vex Mind controlling it. The loss of Kira came as a surprise to SAVATHUN, the Witch Queen, disrupting her ability to maintain control over the taken forces. With Kira's destruction, the immediate threat to the last city was diminished. However, this victory did not come without further unrest. The presence of the Illusory, or the Fallen, within the city caused tensions to rise, especially with the faction led by Lakshmi II, the leader of the future war cult. Lakshmi conspired with other factions to expel the Illusory from the city, trying to rally the Guardians to her cause. When her attempts failed, she resorted to using a Vex portal to force the Illusory out, with the apparent aid of Osiris. But Lakshmi's plan backfired. She was unable to control the Vex portal, which instead triggered a direct assault on the last city. The Vex invasion escalated into a fierce conflict, putting the House of Light, the Illusory refugees in the city, in grave danger. Lakshmi too died during this chaos, but the Guardians managed to close the portal, save the Illusory, and destroy the Vex. In the aftermath, Osiris mysteriously disappeared, leading many in the tower to suspect that he had been somehow involved in the Vex attack. Determined to track Osiris down, the Guardian, along with Saint 14 and Crow, followed his trail to the reef. There they entered the Dreaming City, where they encountered an unsettling sight. Osiris was in conversation with Marasov, the Queen of the Awoken. As the three Lightbearers approached, it quickly became clear that Osiris knew this was not Osiris at all. To their shock, the figure before them revealed itself to be none other than SAVATHUN, the Witch Queen, who had taken on Osiris's form to hide from her sister, Ziva-Arath. Marasov intervened, encasing SAVATHUN in a massive crystal prison. In the face of Saint 14's demand for answers, SAVATHUN explained that she had assumed Osiris's identity in order to avoid detection by Ziva-Arath, who was hunting her on behalf of unknown powers. To save herself, SAVATHUN struck a bargain with Marasov in exchange for removing the parasite, the worm that had been implanted within her. She promised to release Osiris back to the Guardians. Though wary of the notorious Witch Queen and her history of deceit, Saint 14 and the Guardian agreed to help Marasov as they were desperate to rescue Osiris. Marasov, in turn, required the help of the Guardians to free her Techions, powerful awoken sorceresses who could assist in the delicate task of removing the worm from SAVATHUN's body, and preventing Xevo-Wrath from corrupting the very fabric of reality through the ley lines in the Ascendant Realm. This task led the Guardians into the Ascendant Realm, where they battled to free the Techions. While this took place, SAVATHUN remained trapped in her crystal prison, but she requested a personal audience with the Guardian. When the Guardian agreed to meet her, SAVATHUN revealed a staggering truth. She explained that her actions, though often deemed villainous, had been motivated by a complex and often unseen purpose. She had been helping the Guardian for far longer than they had realized. She had been protecting them from the Black Fleet, guiding Crow to the last city to be redeemed, ensuring Zavala did not go to war with the Empress Catul, and even exposing Lakshmi II's conspiracy against the Elixni. SAVATHUN claimed that she had even saved Osiris from Xevo-Wrath when he had become lightless. Despite the Guardian's initial shock, SAVATHUN insisted that she was no longer a villain, and that neither she nor the Guardian were heroes. Instead, they were both paracausal, existing beyond the normal constraints of the light and the dark. Despite this unsettling revelation, the Guardians proceeded with Marasov's plan. They sought out the Techions in the hope that removing SAVATHUN's worm would strip away her lies and deception, leaving her vulnerable and without the protections of her throne world. Marasov, ever cautious, planned to strike down the Witch Queen once her power was gone. However, suspicions lingered, particularly with Ikora Rey and Crow. During her time impersonating Osiris, SAVATHUN had made Crow gather dead ghosts from the Spider's collection, but the purpose of this was unknown, raising even more questions. As the plan unfolded, SAVATHUN reached out again, this time attempting to speak directly to Crow. She claimed that all the encouragement and advice she had given him while posing as Osiris had been genuine. She warned him that without understanding the truth of her actions, he would remain vulnerable to manipulation by those with false promises. Despite her words, both Ikora and Marasov forbade Crow from meeting with SAVATHUN, believing he would fall prey to her lies and manipulation. This decision angered Crow, who felt trapped and isolated by the refusal to trust him. Frustrated and eager for answers, Crow confronted SAVATHUN. The Witch Queen toyed with him, acknowledging that she had wanted to be kind, but the truth could be painful, especially for someone like him, who had run from his past. Uldren Sov, with the Guardian watching, and despite Glint's pleas, Crow touched the crystal containing SAVATHUN, unlocking a flood of memories. He saw his former life as Uldren, his death as the Guardian's hands, and the pain of his rebirth. This revelation shook Crow to his core, and he stormed away, angered and devastated. Glint, too, condemned SAVATHUN for causing Crow such pain, but she remained unmoved, merely stating the truth had come from a friend. Marasov soon learned of the emotional toll SAVATHUN had exacted on Crow, and her anger was palpable. Crow, now further distanced from the Awoken, requested a new assignment from Ikora Rey, and Marasov ordered that SAVATHUN no longer receive visitors. The Witch Queen, imprisoned and isolated, was left to contemplate her fate as the Dreaming City became a place of division and distrust, both among the Guardians and within the ranks of the Awoken themselves. For months, Marasov, the Queen of the Awoken, had been preparing for a daring ritual that would rid the universe of SAVATHUN's dangerous presence once and for all. At the heart of the ritual was the removal of the worm that had been embedded within SAVATHUN's body, a twisted parasitic entity that fueled the Witch Queen's power. Marasov had gathered all the necessary ingredients and completed the necessary preparations, including rescuing the last of the Techions, the ancient order of awoken sorceresses, whose dark magic would enable the exorcism. Once the ritual was nearing completion, there was one glaring problem. The forces of SAVATHUN's sister Xevo-Wrath were closing in, ready to stop Marasov at any cost. To protect herself and the ritual from any potential interruptions, Marasov called upon her most trusted allies. She gathered her corsairs, the elite warriors of the Awoken, and enlisted the help of Saint 14, the legendary Titan, who had proven his loyalty to the cause. Together they formed a protective circle around Marasov, as she began the delicate task of excising the Witch Queen's worm. Despite the looming threat of Xevo-Wrath's forces, Marasov remained resolute. The ritual had to be completed, no matter what the cost. As Marasov and her allies fought to hold off the approaching forces, Xivor Wrath, determined to stop the ritual and keep Savathun's strength intact, sent her most fearsome champion, Kel'Garath, to disrupt the ceremony. But Kel'Garath proved no match for the combined might of the Awoken and the Guardians. The ritual continued without interruption, and ultimately Marasov succeeded in removing the worm from Savathun's form. The dark parasite was exorcised, leaving the Witch Queen weakened and vulnerable for the first time in centuries. With the worm finally gone, Marasov believed the time had come to bring Savathun to justice for her many misdeeds. Among these was the manipulation of Uldren Sov, Mara's own brother, pushing him down a dark and destructive path that led to his eventual death and resurrection as the corrupted Prince Uldren. Marasov, still reeling from the pain of Uldren's fall, was determined to make Savathun pay for her part in his tragic journey. She ordered the crystal prison containing Savathun to be shattered, and the Witch Queen was released. But just as Marasov prepared to deal the final blow, Savathun revealed a shocking twist. She had anticipated this moment and had planned accordingly. Before her imprisonment, Savathun had woven a complex spell into the very fabric of her prison, a failsafe that allowed her to escape the instant the crystal shell was broken. As the prison shattered, Savathun vanished into a burst of dark magic, slipping away into the shadows. Despite her escape, Savathun kept her part of the bargain. As promised, she returned Osiris to the Awoken and the Guardians, bringing him back from the brink of death. However, the return of Osiris was not without its costs. The warlock was alive, but gravely weakened from his time spent under Savathun's influence. His body and mind were broken, and it was clear that it would take time for him to fully recover. Although both Marasov and the Guardians were furious at Savathun's deception, they found some small comfort in the fact that Osiris had been returned, even if he was not whole. Marasov in particular had been outmaneuvered. She had believed that by excising the worm, she could finally rid herself of Savathun's influence and end the curse on the Dreaming City. But Savathun had turned the tables, escaping with her life and leaving Marasov with nothing but the lingering threat of the Witch Queen's machinations. However, Marasov was not entirely defeated. While Savathun had escaped her grasp, Marasov had managed to keep the worm that had once inhabited Savathun's body. She believed that this worm, now severed from its host, could still offer valuable insights into the Witch Queen's plans and her deeper intentions. Despite the anger and frustration simmering beneath the surface, Marasov knew that this was not the end. Savathun's escape was only a temporary setback, and the true battle was still ahead. In the end, the ritual that was meant to rid the galaxy of the Witch Queen had only served to deepen the mystery surrounding her. But one thing was certain. Savathun's dark influence had not been fully vanquished. The war was far from over. Savathun, the Witch Queen, had endured countless trials and faced unimaginable losses over her long twisted life. Yet even in her final moments, as she lay vulnerable and broken, she remained the embodiment of cunning and strategy, ever calculating the next move in a game of existence. During her captivity, a vision came to her, one she could not ignore. It was the image of her own death, the final inevitable conclusion of a long and treacherous journey. She was dying, the worm she had sustained her dark power was gone, and with it, her very life force was beginning to fade. The ritual that Marasov and the Guardians had performed to excise the parasite from Savathun's body had left her in a fragile state. The piece of shattered crystal from her prison, which had punctured her side, was a painful reminder that her time was running out. Despite her resilience, she was no longer invincible. In the fading light of the evening, Savathun made her way out the rocky outcrop high above the last city, a place where she had once sought from afar, but now stood in silence. There she gazed up at the traveler suspended in the sky. A being she had spent millennia both chasing and hating, she called it an old friend, but her words were laced with something far darker than friendship. In truth, the traveler had always been an elusive enigma to her, and in many ways it had been both her enemy and a source of deep fascination. How clever would it be, she mused aloud, her voice hoarse from her wounds, if, after everything, after all the centuries of pursuit and enmity, the traveler simply let me die. What a trick that would be, elegant in its finality. Savathun's long twisted history with the traveler was filled with moments of confrontation, manipulation, and bitter rivalry. Once she had sought to steal its power, to use it as a tool for her own designs. Over time, her quest evolved, no longer just a pursuit of power, but a dangerous obsession, a need to understand what the traveler truly was. She had tried to break it off, to bend it to her will, but now, standing before it in her dying moments, she could only wonder if this was the end of their long-fraught relationship. She chuckled weakly at the thought, her words trailing off as she slipped into unconsciousness. Her injuries were too severe. The life force within her was fading fast. But the thought of death, of finality, was strangely freeing. She asked herself, perhaps for the first time in centuries, if this was really the end. Would the traveler really just let her slip away, without any further game or grand design? Was that the ultimate trick? With that final unspoken question hanging in the air, SAVATHUN collapsed, her body falling to the cold ground beneath her. Her eyes dimmed, and the warmth of life left her. For a moment, the Witch Queen, the dark and calculating force who had shaped the fate of so many, was no more. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Just as the last embers of her life began to flicker out, a soft glow appeared on the horizon. The ghost, Amaru, arrived at the scene, summoned by the very light SAVATHUN had once tried to manipulate. With the pulse of the traveler's power, Amaru revived her, bringing the Witch Queen back from the brink of death. The light flowed through her once more, a strange and paradoxical gift. SAVATHUN opened her eyes, finding herself once again tethered to existence, though now in a weakened, vulnerable state. The traveler had not let her die, not yet at least. It had offered her a second chance, though whether it was a boon or a curse was something only time would tell. SAVATHUN, now alive once more, could only wonder what the traveler's true intentions were. Had it chosen to keep her alive as part of some greater plan, or had it in its mysterious way simply granted her the final mercy she had sought in her last moments? The answer, as always with the traveler, remains as elusive as ever. But for now, SAVATHUN had been given a gift, a reprieve, however temporary, from the clutches of death. And in that moment, she was once again forced to face the unknown future that lay ahead. After her resurrection, SAVATHUN found herself in a state of amnesia, unable to remember the vast knowledge and power that once defined her. Stripped of her memories, she relied heavily on her ghost, Amaru, and her most trusted witch to help her piece together the remnants of her past and rediscover her purpose. These fragments of her history were elusive, locked away within her own mind, but, though carefully investigated, SAVATHUN realized that certain powerful artifacts, particularly those she found on the lure, held the keys to unlocking the memories she had lost. These ancient relics, imbued with both the light and the darkness, had the ability to restore the forgotten aspects of her existence. Determined to regain what she had lost, SAVATHUN decided to outsource her remembering, seeking out the forces capable of helping her unlock her full potential once more. It was during this time that she returned to her throne world, a place that had once thrived under her rule. But upon her arrival, she was struck by the stark transformation it had undergone in her absence. Without the strength of her old power to sustain it, her throne world had withered and become a hollow shell of its former grandeur. Despite its loss, SAVATHUN was resolute. Addressing her brood, she spoke to them with a voice that echoed her newfound conviction. "My children," she began, "I know the truth, and out of my love for you I will share it." She revealed to them a profound truth. The traveler's gift, the enigmatic force that had been a source of conflict in the universe, had now been something she could harness. In an act that was both symbolic and literal, she killed her most trusted witch using the power of the light, a demonstration of her new command over the very forces that once opposed her. With that, she solidified her connection to the light, marking the beginning of her transformation. This act of power was not merely a declaration to her brood, but a metamorphosis for SAVATHUN herself. She began to reshape her throne world, infusing it with the light and redesigning it for something that reflected her new self. The once dark, foreboding architecture was replaced with bright, elegant structures that shone with radiant intensity. The landscape, once a domain of shadows and mystery, now glittered with a brilliance that represented the Queen's evolving identity, and being capable of wielding both light and darkness in equal measure. In a moment of triumph, SAVATHUN sealed Rulk, her former ally and enemy, within the depths of the sunken pyramid. This was not just a move to protect her domain, but a statement to the witness, the enigmatic force that sought to manipulate her. She sent a gleeful letter to the witness, reveling in her newfound power in the capture of Rulk, knowing that she had taken another step in securing her dominance over the forces of the universe. As SAVATHUN's influence continued to grow, her court became a beacon of light and power. The transformation of her throne world, infused with the engines of both light and darkness, did not go unnoticed. A number of guardianless ghosts, perhaps drawn by the radiance of SAVATHUN's domain or perhaps swayed by her influence, flocked to her court. These ghosts, devoid of guardians to serve, began reviving the dead members of the Hive, breathing new life into the ranks of SAVATHUN's forces. This marked the birth of the Lucent Brood, a faction of hive warriors who had been resurrected through the power of the light, their loyalty now divided between the forces of darkness and the guidance of SAVATHUN. These new light-bearers, along with the remaining members of SAVATHUN's brood, formed a powerful army to protect their queen's domains from threats both internal and external, including the looming danger of the Black Fleet, the Scorn, and the Guardians themselves. In this way, SAVATHUN the Witch Queen fully embraced her new identity as ruler of light and darkness, setting the stage for a new chapter in the ongoing conflict across the universe. With her radiant court, the Lucent Brood at her side, and her renewed understanding of the Traveler's Gift, SAVATHUN had transferred herself from a fallen, forgotten god into a queen of immense, untold power, ready to rewrite the entire fate of the galaxy in her own terms. After Mars reappeared from the Shroud of Darkness, a mysterious ship belonging to SAVATHUN the Witch Queen materialized above Mars's cradle. A Guardian was quickly dispatched to investigate. Using a Cabal cannon, the Guardian boarded the ship and glimpsed SAVATHUN herself preparing to return to her throne world. In a desperate attempt to stop the Guardian, SAVATHUN summoned a Lightbearer Knight to hold them off. Despite the Knight's formidable power with the light, the Guardian managed to break through and enter SAVATHUN's throne world. SAVATHUN confronted the Guardian, questioning how they could destroy a hive ghost so similar to their own. She briefly engaged the Guardian in combat, but was ultimately slain. However, the battle turned out to be a trap, as SAVATHUN revealed that the Guardian had defeated only one of her projections. She then teleported the Guardian back to Mars, unscathed. Undeterred, the Guardian returned to the Witch Queen's throne world, this time discovering the powers of deep sight and engaging in fierce battles against SAVATHUN's Lightbearer wizards. The Guardian also managed to establish a transmat zone with SAVATHUN's throne world, marking the beginning of Vanguard operations against the Witch Queen. During their investigation of an ancient temple dedicated to Zevo-Wrath, the Temple of the Wrathful, now occupied by the Scorn, the Guardian found Sajira's shell with a psychic fingerprint left by SAVATHUN. Echoes of SAVATHUN's voice whispered, mentioning the witness and urging the Guardian to remember the name. The Guardian continued their investigation, with the help of the renegade hive ghost Finch, who provided a clue leading to a temple dedicated to Oryx. Within the Temple of the Navigator, they faced Alakul, a Lightblade who had been revived. After defeating him, the Guardian discovered a fragment of the Tablets of Ruin, which provided further insight into SAVATHUN's plans. Taking Sajira's shell and the tablet fragment to the Altar of Reflection, the Guardian uncovered shocking revelations. They learned that SAVATHUN had rejected becoming the new master of the Taken. While posing as Osiris, SAVATHUN had uncovered secrets of the light, and in a bid to protect the Traveler from the mysterious witness, had planned to take the Traveler to her throne world to seal it away. Realizing the scope of the Witch Queen's intentions, the Guardian pressed on. Following further guidance from Finch, the Guardian discovered a hidden temple dedicated to SAVATHUN's original identity, Sathona. Navigating through illusions and battling Scorn forces, the Guardian found a calcified worm, Familiar, the same one that had whispered to Sathona long ago. However, when attempting to reveal the worm's memory at the altar, the Guardian was thwarted and forced to seek new clues. Eris Morn, in a moment of insight, pointed the Guardian towards a crystal that was part of SAVATHUN's prison during her time in the Reef. After retrieving the crystal from the apothecary and defeating SAVATHUN's right hand, the Guardian took the crystal to the Altar of Reflection. To their astonishment, the crystal revealed a critical truth. SAVATHUN had not stolen the light, as the Guardian had believed. Instead, the Witch Queen had been blessed with the light by the Traveler. As SAVATHUN relived her death and resurrection as a Lightbearer, she expressed a deep ambiance about the nature of the light and its potential for new beginnings. In her final moments, SAVATHUN acknowledged the Guardian had played a part in her memory's return, though she bitterly noted that the light had given her a fresh start, even if it was one forged in darkness. Shocked by the truth they had uncovered, the Guardian returned to the Vanguard, who were left speechless by the revelation that the Traveler had chosen to raise one of humanity's greatest enemies as a Lightbearer. Zavala was in disbelief, while Eris Morn explained the Traveler's troubling history of uplifting civilizations only to abandon them later. Ikora, however, focused on what truly mattered, the protection of humanity. She warned that if SAVATHUN succeeded in her plan to seize the Traveler, the return of the Witness would lead to humanity's destruction. Ikora theorized that the key to stopping the Witch Queen lay out in the worm familiar the Guardian had found in the Temple of the Cunning. When she examined its history, Ikora discovered a horrifying truth. The whispers that had guided Sathona into leading her siblings to the worm gods had not come from the worms themselves, but from the Witness. The Witness had known that the Traveler would encounter the Krill, the Hive's ancestors, and sought to claim them before the traveler could uplift them. The witness had tricked Sithona into leading her sisters into the deep, where they met the worm gods, thus creating the Hive. With this revelation in hand, Ikora instructed the Guardian to confront Savathun with the truth. Returning once again to Savathun's throne world, the Guardian found that the traveler had already entered the Witch Queen's realm. With Ikora's support, they breached the defenses of Savathun's lucent brood and ascended the Court of Thorns. Savathun, now fully aware of the Guardian's return, taunted them as they fought through her light-bearing hive. In a final confrontation at the sanctum of the Brood Queen, the Guardian temporarily defeated Savathun, but not before she trapped him in a powerful thread-bound spell. As the Guardian pursued, Savathun taunted the ghost, asking how it felt to be a villain in the traveler's eyes. In a heated exchange, the ghost expressed the Guardian's fury over the Hive's atrocities, silencing Savathun for a moment. The Guardian entered a portal to view a memory altar, hoping to find something that might undo Savathun's spell. There they discovered a full extent of the Witch Queen's dark manipulation of the traveler. With Savathun's spell unraveling, the Guardian showed her the memory of the witness's lies, further enraging her. At the peak of her fury, Savathun lost control and her power with the light faltered, allowing the Guardian to undo her spell and expose the full truth. In her final moments, Savathun admitted to her miscalculations, but also pointed out that the Guardian had made a mistake as well. By being so protective of the traveler, they had failed to see that Savathun had tried to protect it too. She warned that the witness was coming and that the game was no longer in the hands of the Guardians. As she collapsed, her ghost Imaru escaped, vowing to lead the Lucent Brood in Savathun's place. Though Savathun was defeated, the Vanguard knew that this was not the end. The traveler had been returned to the last city, but the witness's return loomed ever closer. The Guardian, now more determined than ever, vowed to prepare for the coming storm and stop the witness before another collapse could occur. The ultimate fate of Savathun, the Witch Queen, remained shrouded in uncertainty. While she was killed by the Guardian and her body was subsequently taken by the Vanguard, stored away in a secret vault on Mars, her story did not end with her death. Her ghost Imaru survived the confrontation and remains in hiding, biding his time and likely waiting for an opportunity to resurrect Savathun and continue her dark ambitions. Despite her apparent incapacitation, it's clear that Savathun had long since laid plans to manipulate the Vanguard into unknowingly aiding her return, and these schemes would eventually be revealed. Even in death, temporary or otherwise, her webs of deceit and manipulation show no signs of ceasing. One of Savathun's most insidious traits was her use of cryptic riddles and half-truths, often expressed through her two truths, two lies puzzles at the altar of reflection. These riddles left much of her true intentions up to interpretation. Some of the answers could only be understood by confronting her directly, as she had woven her influence into both the past and the present. Though she had died, her mental manipulation and manipulation of the light and dark could not be easily extinguished. It seemed Savathun had prepared for the possibility of her own death, using her cunning to ensure that even in her temporary defeat, her presence would continue to haunt the Vanguard. While Savathun was one of the most notorious and dangerous figures in Destiny lore, her relationship with the larger forces at play were complex. She was not a mere ally of the Witness or the Pyramid Fleet. Unlike many of her peers among the Hive, Savathun had a far more independent and nuanced agenda. She was not interested in simply serving the darkness, but instead sought to manipulate it. She envisioned a future where she could use her newly created light-bearing hive to rise up against the darkness itself, aiming to either destroy the force that had shaped her or break free from its corrupting influence. She was driven by a desire to escape the influence of the darkness, or at the very least to use its power for her own ends, including confronting the light on her terms. However, Savathun's cunning and ruthless nature were ever present. When engaged with the Vanguard, she showed no mercy and no interest in humans or the Earth, likely seeing them as pawns to be discarded when no longer useful. If given the opportunity, she would have undoubtedly killed the Guardian, her greatest adversary. Despite her self-serving schemes, Savathun's lingering influence was not entirely destructive. Eris Morn, a key figure in the Vanguard's fight against the Hive, found a way to use Savathun's corpse for her own purposes. Eris, often driven by a need to understand and combat the Hive's dark magic, sought a way to safely and reliably commune with the Crown of Sorrow. This object, a powerful artifact linked to the Hive's horrific power, had been central to the resurgence of the nightmares, which had manifested upon the Leviathan. In her quest to control the Crown and prevent it from overwhelming her, Eris performed an autopsy on Savathun's remains, hoping to uncover some clue or connection that could aid her. During this examination, Eris made a crucial discovery. Beneath Savathun's skull, she found markings that closely resembled the runic symbols associated with the Crown of Sorrow. This connection provided Eris with a psychic link to the crown, allowing her to manipulate and potentially control its power. The discovery revealed that Savathun had in life likely been a significant connection to the crown, or perhaps even had a hand in its creation. By tapping into this link, Eris hoped to gain an edge on the ongoing battle against the Hive's dark influence, especially as the nightmares began to rise once again. Savathun's death, though seemingly a final blow to her dark schemes, proved to be far from the end of her influence. Even after her passing, her legacy continues to shape the events that followed. Her complex relationship with the darkness, her secret plans for resurrection, and the dangerous powers she wielded ensured that her presence would continue to haunt the galaxy. As the Vanguard faced new threats, including the return of the nightmares and the ever-looming threat of the darkness, Savathun's memory and perhaps even her direct influence remained a powerful force in the ongoing conflict between the light and the dark. So first, to start with a Savathun quote. Immaru, if I am unavailable, wait patiently. The witness will eventually force the Guardian into a corner. They'll realize they need the knowledge only I possess. One among them will be willing to negotiate, not Mara again, poor thing. More likely Ikora, or her Morose, little shadow Eris. Help them with whatever they ask. It will all pay off in the end, and be sure to say something clever to make them believe it was their idea. After the Coalition's efforts to stop the Witness from using the Traveler to create a gateway failed, the Guardians found themselves unable to follow the Witness into its final shape. A breakthrough came after the conflict on Titan, where the rogue worm Asha revealed that the only one who might know how to pass through the gateway was none other than Savathun, the Witch Queen. This revelation left the Coalition in a direct predicament. To pursue the Witness, they would need to allow Immaru to resurrect one of their most cunning adversaries. Zavala reluctantly began considering the plan to revive Savathun despite strong opposition from the Guardian, Lord Saladin, and Saint 14. Both argued that bringing the Witch Queen back was an enormous risk, pointing out that Immaru could not be deceived into a trap. Zavala, however, proposed a different approach, negotiating with Immaru. In exchange for Savathun's resurrection, the Coalition would gain the means to enter the Witness's gateway, while Ikora and Eris Morn assured they had a way to imprison the Witch Queen once revived. Though wary, the opposition eventually agreed to the plan. Immaru, however, had a condition of his own. He revealed that Savathun had anticipated the Guardians' need for her assistance, but would only cooperate if they defeated her sister Xivu-Arath, the Hive God of War. This task, Immaru stated, required Eris Morn to embrace the sword logic and ascend to become a Hive God herself, as only a peer could destroy Xivu-Arath. Despite the daunting terms, the Guardians agreed, and Immaru guided them to Savathun's spire. However, due to Savathun's lingering orders, the Lucent brood remained hostile. The plan advanced with a ritual that transformed Eris Morn into a Hive God. As the Guardians fought through the spire, Immaru aided them, albeit with constant stream of mockery, and provided recordings Savathun had left behind. These recordings offered insights into her sister Xivu-Arath and her unique perspective on wielding the light. The turning point came after Eris and the Guardian defeated the Leviathan Eater, Xivu-Arath's most powerful champion. Following this victory, Eris commanded Immaru to resurrect Savathun. Despite warning that Xivu-Arath remained a threat, Immaru complied. Upon awakening, Savathun, regaining her senses, remarked on Eris' Hive's form, noting she had embraced her true nature. However, Eris wasted no time. She struck Savathun down, drawing immense power from the Witch Queen's death, as Savathun had not been killed since severing her from her worm. Combined with the tiths gathered by the Guardians, Eris became the most potent Hive God, surpassing even Xivu-Arath. Eris wielded her newfound power to weave a spell that banished Xivu-Arath from her throne world, rendering her mortal and vulnerable. Though Savathun escaped, she fulfilled her bargain, revealing to Ikora the secret to crossing the Witness's gateway. True to form, Savathun attempted to manipulate the agreement, but relented under pressure from the young wolf. As a peace offering, she allowed the Guardians to retain access to her throne world, and entrusted them with the custody of Immaru. Should Savathun threaten humanity again, destroying Immaru would sever her connection to the light. From then on, the Guardians continued to disrupt Savathun's experiments by interfering in the altars of summoning. The Witch Queen, ever cunning, occasionally taunted them, but upheld her fragile truce for now. In their relentless pursuit of the Witness, the Guardian forged yet another dangerous pact, this time with the wish granting Amakara Riven. Through this agreement, they secured access to the Traveler's Pale Heart, the enigmatic space between the Traveler that held answers and power. Once inside, the Guardian, working closely with the Vanguard, sought to uncover the Witness's whereabouts, discover a way to destroy it, and prepare the portal for their allies to follow. While exploring the Pale Heart, the Guardian encountered a brood of Lucent Hive who had infiltrated the Black Fleet and crossed the portal before them. These Hive, still devoted to Savathun's vision, fought fiercely against the Witness's forces, the Dread. However, they also turned their weapons on the Guardian, seeing them as a threat. Among them, however, emerged an unexpected ally, Luzaku, the light-bearing Hive Wizard. Unlike her brethren, Luzaku offered her assistance, aiding the Guardian and Cade 6 in assessing visions from the Traveler before the Witness could corrupt them. Luzaku's defection to the Guardian's cause marked a turning point, though she lacked the authority to prevent other Lucent Hive from attacking. As the Guardian and Vanguard pieced together a plan to destroy the Witness, their defiance only fueled the Witness's wrath, forcing a strategic retreat. Reinforcements soon arrived, led by Marasov, who successfully passed through the portal, bringing the Coalition's full strength to the Pale Heart for their climactic confrontation. Among the allies entering the battle was an unlikely participant, Savathun, the Witch Queen herself. She proposed a temporary alliance with the Coalition to eliminate their shared nemesis, the Witness. True to her nature, Savathun's cooperation came with strings attached. She orchestrated challenges to test the Guardian's strength and resolve, ranging from sending her Lucent Hive perilously close to the last city to luring the Guardian into purging Taken infestations. Marasov played a critical role in countering Savathun's schemes, and the two queens engaged in sharp verbal sparring throughout their uneasy collaboration. Despite her manipulations, Savathun eventually retreated to prepare her forces for the final battle while continuing to monitor the Coalition's efforts and offering cryptic commentary. One of the more intriguing dynamics of this alliance was Savathun's interaction with Luzaku. When the Witch Queen learned of Luzaku's independent actions, she expressed pride in the wizard's ability to think for herself and rise above the hierarchical mindset of the Hive. Initially believing herself mocked, Luzaku was surprised when Savathun clarified her praise, admitting that Luzaku embodied a potential future for the Hive, one where their purpose extended beyond the endless cycles of servitude and conquest. As the Guardian pushed forward, tensions flared among the Coalition's leaders. Savathun's provocations led to tense exchanges with Marasov and Empress Katul. Though all parties recognized the necessity of their alliance, the Witch Queen's tests, while frustrating, ultimately strengthened the Guardian for the trials ahead, ensuring they were ready for the decisive battle against the Witness. With Luzaku standing as a rare example of a Hive willing to forge a new path and the Coalition united in purpose, the stage was set for the final confrontation with the Witness. However, even in unity, the specter of betrayal loomed as the Game of Queens played out its fateful conclusion. The climactic confrontation with the Witness began as a 6-member raid team breached the enigmatic monolith where the entity resided. After a grueling and dangerous battle, the team succeeded in severing the Witness's grip on the Traveler's Light, thwarting its attempt to bring about the final shape. Though they dealt a significant blow to the Witness, wounding it deeply, the entity managed to escape before it could be destroyed entirely. It was now cornered and vulnerable, setting the stage for a final assault. The Coalition marshaled its full strength for the decisive battle, with a 12-member Guardian team leading the charge. They were joined by all available allies, including Savathun and her Lucent brood. Recognizing the stakes, Savathun temporarily put aside her schemes to work alongside Marasov, a rare moment of cooperation between the two queens. Together, they sealed any avenues at escape for the Witness, ensuring this would be its final stand. As the Guardians fought through waves of the Witness's forces and reclaimed key territory, Savathun played a pivotal role. She lent her power to the fire team, empowering them with enhanced cleavers to cut through the relentless enemies. The battle culminated in a titanic clash with the Witness itself, its immense power almost overwhelming the Coalition's forces. However, the Guardians, bolstered by the Traveler's Light, turned the tide. Using the Traveler's Light as a weapon, the Guardians dismantled the multitude of consciousnesses that formed the Witness's being. In a final, blinding surge of light, the Witness was utterly unmade, marking the end of its campaign to reshape existence and bring the war to a triumphant close. Despite the shared victory, peace was fleeting. True to her nature, Savathun resumed her schemes almost immediately. Her Lucent Hive, emboldened by the role in the battle, clashed with coalition forces in the aftermath, seeking to claim the Pale Heart for themselves. The coalition, understanding the threat posed by the Lucent Hive's ambitions, committed to keeping the Pale Heart out of Savathun's control. Following the defeat of the Witness, Savathun vanished, her intentions shrouded in mystery. Eris Morn, now deeply entwined with the Hive power herself, began investigating the Witch Queen's disappearance, speculating on her next move. Questions lingered, such as where had Savathun gone? What machinations was she now setting into motion? Though the Witness was no more, the Guardians remained vigilant. The war against the Witness might have ended, but the struggle against the Witch Queen and the ever-evolving threats to humanity had only just begun. Savathun, the Hive god of lies, is the living embodiment of cunning, deception, and trickery. Her every word, gesture, and scheme is meticulously crafted to manipulate and mislead those around her, including her enemies and supposed allies. Beneath her web of lies and misdirection, her true motives remain elusive, hidden behind layers of falsehoods and half-truths. Even in moments of apparent vulnerability, such as when she sought the aid of Marasov and the Guardians, Savathun used her captivity to sow discord, confusion, and mistrust, toying with her benefactors until she was forcibly silenced. Her delight in seeing her adversaries struggle to discern the truth behind her fabrications is a clear reflection of her cruel amusement and satisfaction in chaos. Despite her long-standing allegiance to the worm gods and the darkness, Savathun has always demonstrated a unique skepticism towards the Hive's path. Unlike her siblings, she harbored doubts about the righteousness of their cause, even though she was instrumental in leading them into the deep to meet the worm gods. Many of her most elaborate plots have been aimed at escaping the oppressive demands of the worm symbiotes, including her infamous scheme involving the Dreaming City. Here, she sought to use the curse upon the city as a perpetual murder battery to sustain her worm while minimalizing her own sacrifices. These attempts to break free of the darkness eventually led Savathun to an audacious betrayal. She sought to sever her ties with the darkness entirely and claim the light for herself. As a light bearer, she retained her identity as the god of deceit, hoarding the light for her lucent brood while continuing to oppose the Guardians and the Vanguard. Her newfound power did not temper her ambition or treachery, and even in death, her forces remain a threat to humanity. Savathun's greatest weakness lies in her overconfidence. She believes herself to be the ultimate puppeteer, always in control, always possessing the upper hand. This hubris was exploited by the Witness, who used her belief in her own infallibility against her during her time as Sithona. Whispering lies to her, the Witness manipulated Sithona and her siblings into forging the Hive and binding themselves to the worm gods. Her overconfidence was shaken when the Guardian revealed a piece of her past she had never known, that the Witness had deceived her from the beginning. For the first time, Savathun lost her composure. Enraged and humiliated by this revelation, she abandoned her characteristic poise, ranting and lashing out at the Guardian as they unraveled her plans. After her defeat, she grudgingly admitted to miscalculating, though she warned that the Vanguard had made their own mistake by refusing to offer to protect the Traveler from the Witness in the Black Fleet. Savathun's disregard for life extends even to her closest allies. Her experiments with the light were marked by cold pragmatism, as she killed both Hive and Hive Ghost to further her understanding of its proprieties. Within her throne world, her arcane obulet served as a prison for Lucent Hive forgotten until they were needed for her experiments or schemes. Even her familial ties were subordinated to her ambitions. She encourages the Vanguard to kill her sister, Ziva Wrath, framing it as an act of ultimate love under the Hive sword logic. This chilling worldview reveals her willingness to exploit even the most intimate relationships for her own personal gain. Savathun's story is one of paradoxes. She is a deceiver who occasionally reveals uncomfortable truths, a skeptic of the Hive's cause who played a pivotal role in its creation, and a light-bearer who remains a sworn enemy of humanity. Her actions are driven by a relentless pursuit of freedom and power, but her methods leave a trail of destruction and betrayal. As her schemes continue to unfold even after her death, Savathun remains a figure of fascination and dread. Her legacy is one of brilliant manipulation, ruthless ambition, and a reminder that even gods are not immune to the lies they tell themselves. Savathun's relationships with her siblings Oryx and Ziva Wrath were foundational to her identity and power. In their childhood on Fundament, the three shared a deep bond of trust and comfort. They supported one another through the hardships of their doomed world and relied on Sithona's cunning to guide them. Their decision to accept the pact with the worm gods fundamentally altered this dynamic, binding them together in a cycle of violence and competition defined by the Hive's sword logic. Though marked by treachery and rivalry, Their familial love endured in a uniquely hive manner. SAVATHUN frequently tested her siblings, challenging their strength and resolve. Oryx once declared his love for her when he resurrected her from death with the Tablets of Ruin, admiring her cunning and persistence. Similarly, SAVATHUN valued her siblings as both rivals and partners in the cosmic games of power they played. SAVATHUN's relationship with Xivu Arath, however, became increasingly strained. While she acknowledged her sister's strength and viewed her as spoiled, always benefiting from the absolutes of the sword logic. Despite her care for Xivu Arath, SAVATHUN's ambition and determination to break free from the Worm God's influence drove a wedge between them. She lamented that their bond could not deter her from her chosen path, even as Xivu Arath hunted her out of fear of losing her. SAVATHUN's disdain for Oryx's hypocrisy was evident after his death. She criticized his vengeance for Crota, his son, as inconsistent with the sword logic, which dictated that those who perish are unworthy. Her sharp intellect and disdain for what she perceived as the flaws in her siblings' interpretations of their beliefs underscored her complex relationship with them. SAVATHUN bore several children, including Balwer, Malok, and Dulankaru, but her maternal feelings were as enigmatic as the rest of her character. Her children often served as tools in her schemes rather than objects of affection. For example, Malok was conceived specifically to divert tribute from Oryx, and Dulankaru was instrumental in enacting the curse on the Dreaming City. According to unreliable sources like Truth to Power, her children were unsure whether she loved them or would sacrifice them without hesitation for her own goals. SAVATHUN's relationship with her nephew Nokris was somewhat more collaborative. After Nokris was exiled for his unorthodox practices, he reached out to SAVATHUN. She offered him protection and guidance, learning necromancy from him in exchange. This partnership highlighted her willingness to form alliances when it suited her ambitions, even with family members she might otherwise dismiss. SAVATHUN demonstrated no hesitation in betraying other family members, as seen when she orchestrated the destruction of the Scarlet Court, the last remnants of Oryx's bloodline. Believing their lineage had run its course, she manipulated events to ensure their annihilation by the Guardians. SAVATHUN's relationship with her ghost Amaru stood in stark contrast to her treatment of others. Unlike most Lightbearer Hive, who viewed their ghosts as mere tools, SAVATHUN and Amaru shared a genuine bond of mutual respect and trust. Amaru, blunt and pragmatic, complemented SAVATHUN's elegance and cunning, creating a partnership marked by warmth and camaraderie. Amaru served as her advisor and tactician, guiding her during her early days as a Lightbearer and helping her lead the Lucent Brood. When SAVATHUN was resurrected without her memories, she relied heavily on Amaru's counsel to navigate her new reality. Even after her defeat in the failed ritual to secure her place as a Lightbearer, Amaru remained loyal, continuing to oversee the Lucent Brood while evading the Vanguard. In an ironic twist, the Vanguard found themselves forced to cooperate with Amaru in the fight against Xivu Arath, as SAVATHUN's knowledge became critical to passing through the Witness's Gateway. This unlikely partnership underscored the complexity of SAVATHUN's legacy and her enduring influence. During her conversations with the Guardian, SAVATHUN revealed a rare glimpse into her perspective on her relationships. She described her bond with her siblings as one of deep commitment, claiming that all of their actions had been for each other. She understood Xivu Arath's pursuit of her as an expression of fear and loss rather than pure hostility, though she admitted their paths were now irreconcilable. SAVATHUN's relationships, whether familial, strategic, or adversarial, were marked by complexity, manipulation, and occasional glimpses of genuine care. Her cunning ambition and willingness to exploit even her closest ties defined her interactions and left a lasting impact on the Hive and beyond. So what did you guys think of SAVATHUN, the Witch Queen? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.